Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Program, a friend, a patriot, somebody who's fighting for liberty and smaller government. Mr. Tim Jacob is with us from ArkansasTermLimits.org. Tim, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Paul. Great to be here.
I know that we were all disappointed when we were not able to restore the term limits last time and get it back on the ballot. I know you were disappointed as well, but this is about trying to get that back on the ballot and actually right or wrong that was done to the people of Arkansas in a deceptive way. And I'm just so glad that we're going to try to get this done again.
Well, we are. There's people working all around the state, and they've been doing it for about 3 months now, and they're getting petitions on they're getting signatures on petitions all over the state, but we don't really have that much of a presence in Northeast Arkansas yet. We are going to be in Northeast Arkansas in Jonesboro tomorrow night. Me and a couple other volunteers around the state are going to be meeting with any interested people, and I encourage everybody in your listening audience, if you're interested in the issue of term limits, term limiting our legislature like it used to be, like it was for 22 years. If you're interested, please come to the Western Sizzlin at 2405 Highland Drive tomorrow night. That's Thursday, August 10th at 6:30 to 8 p.m. We're going to be explaining the amendment. We're going to be trying to organize for a volunteer campaign so we can get this back on the ballot so the people of Arkansas have the right to vote what they have voted in 2 landslide elections before, and that we can restore term limits to the state legislature.
I'm so glad that you're doing this, and I know we do have listeners in Northeast Arkansas, and that we have a great listening base here. And so, folks, I mean, this is something that was done to us, and we the people need to respond because, I mean, quite frankly, the reason they increased their term limits was Senator John Woods, who's now been indicted for a different potential crime. And I feel like it is a crime. I feel like what John Woods did in the legislature and what the legislature did by putting issue 3 of 2015 on the ballot, which claimed that they were setting term limits when in reality they increased term limits. I feel like that's a deception, and I feel like the people of Arkansas have got to respond and undo what they've done.
That's right. The Arkansas Democrat Gazette called it manifest fraud. There was a Hendricks poll that was done right before the election in 2014, and it said 65% of the Arkansas voters were going to support the ethics amendment, and then they were told that it also doubled politicians' terms in the legislature. That support dropped to 30% at that point. The problem was we didn't have a person at each polling place explaining the deception of the amendment.
You're exactly right. I mean, I talked to people back, who just got through voting and, or who were looking over at a mock voting card and they said, voted for that. That was the term limits bill. That's got to be good. And people were coming up to me, who know me personally and know what I do. They were coming up and saying, yeah, you got to be a fan of this. And I had to and that's when I knew we had lost. That's when I knew it was going to pass.
Right. Because
I said, that they've won, that there's deceptive language. One, and Tim, and I'd love to get you to respond to this. We're talking with Tim Jacob. It's ArkansasTermLimits.org. There was a proposed constitutional amendment this last time in the Arkansas General Assembly that would have required constitutional amendments that are submitted to the people to be up for review with the Attorney General. Just like you guys, because this is kind of unfair. You guys can't put a deceptive title and get it through, nor would I think you wanted to, because it's a popular issue, but yet the legislature can put a deceptive title on, and it can't be reviewed by the Attorney General and be forced to change.
That's exactly right. It's not an even playing field. They can put it on the ballot with a voice vote. They can use the word reform. Citizens cannot even use the word reform in their amendment. The Attorney General, and the Attorney General should overlook our amendments. They should make sure that the ballot title is not deceptive. But with legislative amendments, the courts have said that they have the power to write their own ballot title. And it has been a tragedy for the voters of Arkansas when they do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to point out that was Senator Linda Collins Smith's idea to try to reform that aspect of it, so people won't be deceived anymore by their own representatives. So Tim, you can go to ArkansasTermLimits.org, and I want to remind everybody, tomorrow night, if you're in the Northeast Arkansas area in Jonesboro, the Western Sizzlin' from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Tim, you're gonna be there, right?
I am going to be there with several other volunteers. We're just going to talk about the issue, but we're also going to try to encourage other people to get involved. This has got to be a grassroots effort. And I want to tell you a little, just a statistic that I've come to be aware of. Guess what the percentage of term limits proposals have been done by the average citizen, the average voter?
The percentage you're talking about it has been proposed by the average voter. That percentage is 100%. And there's been hundreds of them. There's also been hundreds of attempts to water down term limits, to get rid of term limits. And guess what the percentage is there of those being proposed by the average voter? Zero.
Zero. It's zero because the legislature, government officials, the self-serving have always tried to do away with what is obviously the people's will. Mm-hmm. This same proposal, or very similar proposal, has won in 2 landslide elections in our state. In 1992, it was the greatest yes vote in Arkansas history. In 2004, when the legislature tried to double their term, 75 out of 75 counties said no to the legislature. They know what we feel about on this issue. They know what our voice is. They know what our will is, but they refuse to accept the voters' will. And we're just asking the legislature to respect voters and respect the vote. Mm-hmm. We want to get this back on the ballot, give the voters of Arkansas just a fair chance to vote for it.
Yeah, exactly. We have now listeners in Northeast Arkansas, Mountain Home, Stuttgart, Russellville, and now our newest affiliate, KFPW, out of Fort Smith. And so I see that if you go to ArkansasTermLimits.org, Tim, you can click on petition, and there's a way to download the petition, and you've got 3 easy steps here. So can you just tell us some of the guidelines? Because I know sometimes it can kind of get tricky as far as signatures being thrown out and things like that. There may be volunteers out there in our audience right now that want to do this or take this, to their church or their civic group and get signatures. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, when you go to our website, which is ArkansasTermLimits.org, you can download the petition. You can give your information, and we can contact you if you'd like to volunteer. And I encourage you, if you've ever gotten involved in a political position or political issue before, this is a great one to do. It's nonpartisan. You can sign up as a volunteer, and you can also donate to the cause. And we encourage everybody to do that. But when you download a petition, and it's 10 spaces, 10 signatures on each petition, there's a few guidelines. And the first guideline is petitions in Arkansas must be done by county. So if you're in Craighead County, only Craighead County voters can do that. If you're in Greene County, you have to get another petition sheet, and they can start signing that if they're Greene County voters.
Okay.
After you get that, you have to have it notarized. Every petition has to be notarized, but we'll help you do that. If you come to the meeting tomorrow night at Western Sizzlin' at 2405 Highland Drive at 6:30, we'll go over all those steps. We encourage you to come. We know you've got a great listening audience. It's the best talk show in Arkansas, according to me. I tell you that.
Well, thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. And also, only registered voters may sign. I mean, that's a no-brainer, but you got to make sure that they're registered voters, and they got to know that they're registered voters.
Right. The powers that be don't want this on the ballot. They know they're going to lose if we get on the ballot because we're getting on the ballot with an honest ballot title. They got on and didn't tell what was in the amendment. Unfortunately, we tripled legislators' pay because that was stuck somewhere in the amendment. Never at the polls was the voter allowed to see that. Also, they doubled their terms. That nowhere at the polls was the voter allowed to see that.
Yeah.
And it's important that we get this on the ballot. And it's just a do-right rule. do right by the Arkansas voter. Let's give them a honest ballot title, and let's let them make that choice themselves. Please come out tomorrow. And I wanted to also give a phone number out. If people don't want to go to the website, they can just call our number, and we can get their information if they'd like to volunteer. If they just want a sheet, if they need to just get family and friends to sign. And that is 501-590-8260.
Okay, 501-590-8260. And who's going to answer that phone number, Tim?
Well, you'll probably leave a message, but Tom Steele is the statewide coordinator. He's doing a great job. He's a selfless patriot.
Okay.
And we have Democrats working with us. We have Republicans working with us. We have independents working with us, liberal, conservative, moderates. It doesn't matter. Everybody realizes, except lobbyists and politicians, everybody realizes we need term limits. We need them in Washington. We don't need to retreat here in our state.
So I want to illustrate how the establishment doesn't want this on the ballot. I want to refresh everybody's mind. It just came to me, but correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. But when you guys were gathering signatures the last time, there were paid canvassers gathering signatures for a lot of things, mainly medical marijuana. And there was some allegation towards the end that the people who were behind the medical marijuana initiative were connected with people who, didn't want to see term limits go back the way they were and actually be established again. And so they told the marijuana canvassers that if you also canvass to put term limits back on the ballot, we won't pay you. That's the kind of dirty stuff that went on, correct?
That is exactly right. They were threatened that they would be fired and they wouldn't be able to turn in any petitions if they got any signatures on the term limit petition. Coincidentally, all of them wanted to carry the term limits petition because it was the easiest petition to get signed. People love term limits. Every time it's on the ballot with an honest ballot title, it wins. Every time.
Wow. Anyway, we've got an uphill battle when they try to pull stuff like that, but it just shows you that, we're dealing with, I believe, truly dishonest people who are, they'll chalk it up to, no, I'm just using the system, I'm just using the rules available. Well, just because it's available does not mean that it's right. It's wrong. And so, folks, the website, arkansastermlimits.org, Tim Jacob, I appreciate you coming on. I hope everybody goes out to Western Sizzlin' tomorrow night in Jonesboro who can, from 6:30 to 8, to learn everything they need to know and to get this back on the ballot. And let's restore a little sanity back down in Little Rock at the Marble Palace. Tim Jacob, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks for sending this important message out to listeners. We hope to see you tomorrow night.
All righty, and I want to do it again. I mean, any time you want to come on, Tim, you have an open invitation.
You're wonderful. Thanks so much, Paul.
All righty. Folks, we got to take a break. The Liberty Machine rolls on. Back in just a moment.